Imagine you're a chef known for creating some of the best dishes in town. You've got scores of incredible recipes that you're sure people will love. But there's only one problem. The restaurant owner says, "Sorry, pal, you can only put 5 on the menu." Well, you know that if you could serve the full smorgasbord that you're capable of, it would make the restaurant, and more importantly, you as a chef, more popular. But the rules won't let you showcase your full potential. So what do? Well, believe it or not, this was exactly the situation that Konami faced during the heyday of the Nintendo Entertainment System. But instead of serving up delicious food, they were serving up some pretty rad games. However, Nintendo's iron grip kept them from sharing all of the great games that they had in waiting. So how did Konami break free from Nintendo's chains? The answer is an intriguing part of gaming history. It's the late 1980s, and Nintendo is at the top of the video game world. The NES is dominating homes, and publishers are clamoring to get their games on the console. But Nintendo wasn't just selective. They had very strict rules. One of the harshest, no publisher could release more than 5 games a year for the NES. Why did Nintendo do this? They wanted to maintain strict control over quality and prevent the market from being flooded with subpar games. This was a lesson learned from the infamous video game crash of 1983, which in part was caused by an oversaturation of poor quality games. To reassure consumers, Nintendo introduced its Seal of Quality, a gold badge on a game box meant to signify that a title met their standards. Now, while the seal became a recognizable symbol, it wasn't a guarantee of a great game, leaving many wondering how well these quality controls really even worked. Because despite these restrictions, plenty of crappy games still found their way onto the NES. But for giants like Konami, these rules felt more like a creative straitjacket than a form of quality control. However, Konami came up with an ingenious solution: create a new label specifically to release more games while staying within Nintendo's rules. And thus, Ultra Games was born, a clever workaround that allowed Konami to continue innovating and expanding without sacrificing their creativity. Ultra Games was essentially Konami in disguise. It was their secret weapon to bypass Nintendo's restrictions and release even more games on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Just like opening a second restaurant to showcase even more of your delicious recipes, Ultra Games gave Konami the chance to serve up the hits they couldn't release under their own name. In total, Ultra Games published 17 titles for the NES, each bringing something unique to the system. Here's a list of all of those games in order of release date. Metal Gear, released in June 1988, the NES version of the classic stealth action game that introduced players to Solid Snake. While some fans of the original MSX version were critical of the changes, the game became a cult classic and a solid introduction to the series for Western audiences. I still remember this game as the first one I ever borrowed from a friend. He lent me Metal Gear, I lent him Mega Man 2. I think it was a fair trade. Skate or Die, released in December of 1988. This was a fun and quirky extreme sports game where players could compete in half-pipe stunts and downhill races, as well as other events. The game was generally well received for its variety and energetic tone, though its controls take a little bit of getting used to. This was a favorite of mine growing up. Gyrus, released in February of 1989. This is a fast-paced shoot-'em-up where players journey through the solar system to reach Earth. It was known for its incredible soundtrack and great gameplay. It's a real standout in the shmup genre. Q*bert, released in February 1989. A faithful adaptation of the arcade classic where players navigate pyramid-shaped platforms while avoiding enemies. It was well received for its accuracy to the arcade version, though some felt its gameplay was a bit repetitive, given the advancements that other games were making at the time. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, released in June 1989. Boy, do I remember this one. I was a huge fan of the cartoon. This was a very challenging action game that combined platforming and combat, really known for its punishing difficulty. Despite criticism for its brutal challenging level, it was a commercial success and beloved by fans of the franchise. Defender of the Crown, released in July 1989. A medieval strategy game that blended resource management with action sequences. It was a unique experience on the NES. While its visuals were excellent for the time, its gameplay depth is not great. Not one of the better Ultra games, in my opinion. Silent Service, released in December 1989. This was a submarine simulation game that brought tactical naval combat to the NES. It received mixed reviews. I've never played it myself, but some players appreciate its realism, others find it to be overly slow. Kings of the Beach. This was released in January 1990, a competitive beach volleyball game with smooth mechanics and multiplayer fun. Here's another one I've never played. I was more of a Super Spike volleyball fan. However, critics praised its gameplay and multiplayer options, and it's a recommended game for those that enjoy sports titles. Snake's Revenge, released in April of 1990. You may not know, but this was a Western-only sequel to Metal Gear. Reception on the game was mixed. Some appreciated its action-packed gameplay. Others have lamented its departure from the stealth focus of the original. Mission Impossible, released in September of 1990. This is an action puzzle game based on the hit series, combining stealth and challenging missions. It was met with mixed reviews. Some critics highlighted its ambitious design, others have criticized its difficulty. Roller Games, released in September 1990. This was a beat-em-up inspired by roller derby, blending fast-paced action with unique sports gameplay. It earned a warm reception for its creativity and fun mechanics, though some have felt that it's a little bit on the short side. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. This was released in December of 1919. I was a huge fan of the arcade game in the series, as I already mentioned, so I was really looking forward to this release. I think this was the most expensive Nintendo game I ever purchased. I believe it was $69.99 when it was launched. This is a port of the popular arcade beat-em-up. It was a fan favorite and widely praised for admirably capturing the arcade experience on the limited NES. Ski or Die, released in February 1991. This is basically a winter sports version of Skate or Die, released earlier, featuring events like downhill skiing and inner tube racing. It has good variety, but there's uneven quality between each of the events you can choose from. Base Wars, released in June 1991. This is a futuristic take on baseball where robots battle on the field, blending sports and combat. It received positive feedback for its originality and fun multiplayer gameplay. I remember renting this on one weekend and I had a good time with it. Pirates, released on October 1991. This is a port of Sid Meier's classic game offering high seas adventure and strategic gameplay. This is one of the more well-received Ultra titles. It was lauded for its depth and replayability, becoming a real standout on the NES. Nightshade, released in January 1992. This is a unique point-and-click adventure with comic book-inspired visuals and humor. It was praised for its originality, though some found its puzzles to be frustrating. Lastly, we have Star Trek: The 25th Anniversary, released in February 1992. Obviously, a space exploration game that combined tactical starship combat and missions based on the TV series. It was well received by fans of the franchise for its faithfulness and engaging gameplay. So, what happened to Ultra games? By the early 90s, believe it or not, Nintendo started to relax its licensing rules, and Konami no longer needed the Ultra label. They folded everything back under the Konami name, leaving Ultra games as a fascinating footnote in gaming history. But think about this. Without Ultra games, we might never have seen some of these iconic titles on the NES. Konami's clever workaround didn't just outsmart Nintendo, it gave us some unforgettable gaming experiences. But what if Nintendo's rules had been more strict? Would we have missed out on classic titles like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Metal Gear? Beyond that, we see that Nintendo has always been extremely protective of its brand. Has that helped the gaming industry or hurt it in the long run? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you like this content, well, I think you know what to do. Thanks for watching, and happy gaming, my friends.